And welcome back to another podcast with Mr. Hagan. And on this video, we're going to continue to talk about the stock market. I just want to remind all viewers that this video is not designed to be investment advice. Its purpose is educational only. This video and other videos in this playlist are designed to teach about different theories of investing. If you want investment advice, please see a professional. All right, so let's talk a little bit about why somebody would want to own stocks in the first place. What would be the reason? And so to talk about that, we first want to talk about the concept of stock. What is stock? What does that word actually mean? And what stock means essentially is that you have ownership in a company. You have some part ownership in a company when you buy stock, and I'll go into details a little bit on that in this video. And then number two, the other word that we'll care about using here is shares. A share is one part of a company. So if you own a share in a company, then you own one part of the company. So stocks is the kind of the general concept, the ownership of a company, and a share is the part of that ownership that any one person might have. So let's take a look at why you would want to own a company. What would be the reason? So first of all, a company. The reason why that you would want to own a company is to share in their profits. You'd want to share in their profits, or what is also called earnings. So I'm going to use those terms interchangeably, earnings and profits. And what are earnings and profits? Well, earnings or profits are calculated by taking the revenue that the company brings in, that's the money that the company makes from selling their product, minus their costs and expenses, whatever they have to pay to their workers, whatever they have to pay to heat their factories, whatever they have to pay for their natural resources, etc. And you just do revenue minus costs and expenses, and that's a company's earnings or profits. So if we write that as a formula, we would say that earnings or profits are equal to revenue. Revenue is price times quantity, the price of the good times the number of units that you sell, minus your cost for your resources, which are land, labor, capital, entrepreneurial skills. We talk about those on another playlist. So you take your earnings minus your costs, and that's, sorry, I said that wrong. You're going to take your revenue minus your cost, and that's going to give you the company's earnings. And then if you own part of the company, then you will receive some of those earnings or profits. And again, we'll get into the details of that as we go here. The first time that a company sells stock or shares in the company is called an initial public offering. I'm going to talk about that in some detail. That's the first time that a company sells shares. And then anytime they sell shares after that is called the secondary market. That's where most of us would deal with stocks, would be on the secondary market. So let's look at a picture of what this might look like. So let's imagine that we have some company, for example, like Microsoft. So let's imagine that we have the company Microsoft. So this is just going to represent the company, right? So here's Microsoft. And Microsoft, of course, originally created and owned, let's say entirely by Bill Gates. I'm not sure if that was true, but let's just say it was. Bill Gates was the original owner of Microsoft. So this is Microsoft, and they're producing software, and they're selling it. And let's say that they want to expand their business. And if they want to expand their business, what they're going to need is money. They're going to need money to expand, to open new factories, to hire new workers, etc. And they don't have the money. So the question is, where do they get the money? Well, they could take it out of their profits, out of the earnings that they're making right now. That'd be one possibility. Another possibility is they could go borrow the money in the debt markets. They could borrow it from a bank or something like this. But another possibility is they could sell shares in the company. So literally what what would happen is Microsoft would be divided into little parts. Now, we wouldn't actually, of course, like chop up the company or something like that in some literal way, but we're going to take the company, we're going to break it into little parts. Each little part is called a share, and then we're going to sell those shares in the market. Okay, and we could break this company into 100 shares, 1,000 shares, 1,000,000 shares. We could break this company into any number of shares that we wanted to. Let's just say for now that we break Microsoft, that Bill Gates decides that he's going to divide Microsoft into 100 shares. Okay, now Microsoft's a lot more shares than that, probably in the billions or something, millions anyway. But let's say that he's just going to divide the company into 100 shares. And then what he could do is he could sell those shares to other people. So here we got, let's just get some, common everyday guy. This person's going about their life, earning a living, whatever. And they decide that they'd like to take the risk and own some shares in Microsoft. So Bill Gates would give this guy 1 share of the company. Okay, so he would give this guy 1 share of the company, which would be like a piece of paper. And this piece of paper would say that this guy here owns 1 share, 1 part of Microsoft. And in return for that share, for that ownership, this guy would give money over here to Bill Gates, to the company called Microsoft. So, what does Microsoft get out of this deal? What Microsoft gets out of this deal is they get money to expand their business. They get money to expand their business. What does this guy get? What this guy gets is he gets shares in the company. So, when Microsoft makes money, what are they going to have to do? They're going to have to share some of those profits, some of that earnings with this guy. Okay? Now, the first time that this happens is called the IPO. This is the initial public offering. Now, why? What are these words? IPO, initial public offering. Well, the word public here simply means this: the company used to be private. That means it was owned by one guy. It used to be private. It was owned by one guy, say Bill Gates. Now it's public. That means it's broken into shares and it's owned by a lot of people. Okay, who own these 100 shares. So that's the IPO. Now, most of us would never be involved in an IPO. What we would be involved in is what is called the secondary market. So what is the secondary market? Well, let's say this guy paid $30 for a share. Okay, let's say the money that he gave to Bill Gates was $30 for 1 share in the company. That was right here, the $30. So this guy paid $30 for the stock for 1 share. And maybe he thinks, he looks at the company and he decides, they're really not doing as well as I thought they were going to be doing. I want to sell this. I'm not happy with this investment. So he could sell it to some other guy over here, whoever this other person is, and he disagrees. He thinks, this guy over here thinks, oh yeah, Microsoft, I think they're going to do really well. And so this guy, he wants to buy shares in the company. So what happens is the first person, he owns 1 share. He paid $30 for it. He could now give that share to this guy. He gives the share to this guy. And maybe that costs, maybe he gets paid $40 for that share. Okay, maybe he gets paid $40. And so he then made $10. We'll talk about that later on. And that's where this guy gives him that $40. But in return, he gets a share of the company. So now this guy has the share of the company. And now that means if Microsoft makes money, it's going to pay some of that money, some of that profits to this guy over here because he now owns the shares in the company. So this is what is called the secondary market. I'll try to write that here. This is what is called the secondary market. This is what is called the secondary market. Okay? And it's the secondary market because the company is no longer involved. So we had 2 types of sales here. We had the IPO, that was the initial public offering. It's the first time that Microsoft sold shares. And then we have the secondary market, which is when other people start trading shares. Microsoft is no longer involved. These other people are trading shares in the secondary market. And that's where, when you turn on TV and you watch people trading stocks and see what the stock market's doing and things like that, that is typically what you're seeing is the secondary market. All right, this has been Mr. Hagan on another Econ podcast. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you on the next Econ podcast.